So let's presume that you've got it all wired and now you need to test it. So the first thing that you would do is you need to figure out what kind of library can I use? Like what library will run this device? And this is what we're going to do kind of the rest of the semester. We're going to be using a lot of components. Some components like the photoresistor are really simple, no library. Other ones are more complicated, and so the library helps us use the device properly. So let us look at this. So we're going to use a new command here in the workbench. We're going to say control command palette. I'm going to say find libraries. Now, I don't know which library I'm looking for, right? But I know that I have an OLED. So I'm going to say OLED. Hit enter. And let's see what it says. All right. So I see a whole bunch of these ones in blue. Now, when you're searching for a library, it helps to look at how many users there are. So this one has the most, 69,000 users. Okay, that's pretty good. This one down here, 42, it might be great. I'm not knocking it at all. But it's not in many users, so maybe it's not as reliable. I don't know. So I'm going to take this one, and what I need to do is I need to copy this directly. Copy this code. Okay? Because it's also the name of the one that we want. We know we want SparkFun. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to run my command palette again. And I'm going to say install. Install library. And I type exactly as I had from before, from below. SparkFun OLED. All right, so it installed successfully. Now let's look what we got. Over here in our project folder, we now have lib, and here's our library. Okay, now a couple things to explain when you explore a library. If you've never seen C++ much before, then this will explain a little bit. So usually what you're going to see when you install an Argonne library is you're going to see an examples folder and a source folder. The examples folder is theoretically working code that you can copy, modify a little bit, and immediately get something to happen with the device. Okay, it probably won't be exactly what you want, but at least you can test it. And then the source is exactly the code that's used to build the library. And that's sometimes useful, but not quite as much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the examples, and I'm going to see micro OLED shield example. So this is a really good place for us to start. I've used this before, and I know this is going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this code, just select it all. You can do Command A or Control A, just like that. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it here in my own code file. Okay, so this is a working library, or sorry, this is a working example. So if I come in here and I look at what this code is doing, right? It's got some notes, some descriptions. Now it says Photon, but it works with the Argonne, don't worry. Okay, and it's going to explain to you how to wire the device, which we already know. It's going to tell you how to declare it, and then it's going to have a bunch of setup. And you're going to see that basically it's going to have you draw a line, draw a pixel, draw a shape, and draw some text. So it's basically going to test the device. Okay, so it's a really good place to figure out how the device works, because we don't know. We didn't build the library. So let me give you a couple hints here. So I'm going to scroll to the top. Now, on here on line 19, these are just comments, but just for your own reference, because we're not using the Photon, we're using the Argonne, this is actually going to be the MO pin. Okay, so make sure you change that just for your own reference. It doesn't really matter in code, but and then the D0 is going to be the SCK. And my Argonne, I'm just going to call it like that. Okay. Now, again, these 3 pins are the defaults, but you can use any other ones. Okay, so let's scroll down here. Now look here. So here in C++, this is how we import a library. We say include. So just like in Python, you might say import. Here we say include. So we're including this is the library file. This is the actual code file. Now let's go down here to line 46. Now this you're always going to have in most libraries. It says micro OLED OLED. This is the object declaration. So if you think back to your object-oriented programming, we're going to have to build an object which does all of the writing to the object. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this one out. Now we've declared this object. And notice it says if you use reset as D7, DC as D6, and CS as A2, if you use that wiring, you're good to go. if you wanted to change that wiring, you would just make a different declaration, a different constructor basically. Okay, so we can just leave this one as default. And then the only other thing that I need you to change, I just know this from experience, is down here on line 276. There's a few lines of code from 276 to 278. These 3 lines. Just comment those out. Okay? The reason you comment those out is this device, this code library was written to use A7, which we don't have an A7 pin. So it's going to crash. So just sparing you some trouble from having to do that. Okay. Now, what should happen is you should be able to run this on your device. And when you do, the screen is going to show a little OLED screen. It's going to show a picture. It's going to draw some lines. It's going to draw some text. And you can kind of experiment with it. And what I want you to do is play around with it a little bit. Learn how to write hello world, right? You can copy the library code as much as you want. Feel free. You don't have to be original. This is using example code to help you. Okay, now once you get it working to do hello world, then I want you to try to think about, okay, how do I draw a line? How do I turn the knob so that lines get drawn on the screen? And you can kind of look here maybe in the line example or pixel example, right? If you look here in pixel example, for example, it'll show you, uses a for loop to draw something, okay? Line example also shows you how to draw things. But here's the secret. If you're looking in a library and you're like, I'm kind of overwhelmed, I don't know how to start, look at the source code. The source code is basically everything that's supposed to happen. So if I go over here to source for my library, I'm going to see sparkfunoled.cpp and sparkfunoled.h. Now again, if you're new to C++, when we build an object or a class, we put 2 files. One file for C++ has all of the constants and all of the variables and functions, function headers, and the CPP is the implementation. So most of the time, we're just going to look at the header. And look at this. What does this header show us? It shows us every method that's part of this object. So if I want, it shows me there's clear. It shows me I can change the contrast. I can draw a line. I can draw a circle. I can get the height of the LED screen, or LCD screen, and the width of the LCD screen. Right? So this is what we would use to use your example. So I'm kind of having you work on this lab to get the experience of how do you use a library that you're not the expert in, right? I'm not the expert in this at all either, but we're going to be able to use it in order to get our example to work with the potentiometers and the Etch-a-Sketch.